Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're going to look at part 4 of the repurposing of the Department 56 Haunted Mansion display, and we're going to be doing some fence building. I've already done a lot of the fence building, but I'm going to take you on a tutorial and show you exactly how to create it. So with that, let's jump right in. We're going to start by showing you really the completed fence. It's unpainted, but it is done. It's around the entire display. And so we'll take a look at that and then we'll jump in and show you how to create this fence. Okay, well there is the fence. For the most part, it's complete. And as far as the building is concerned, now we got to detail it and paint it and get everything else ready. It's all a step-by-step process. So this step is complete, and we'll just kind of zoom in and look. Now it is not to the scale, first and foremost, of this Department 56 accessory. That's too small. It's intricate detail. They didn't carve this. I mean, maybe they did with some clay and then molded it, but that's pretty difficult and that's pretty small. So mine looks a little bit different, and that's okay. I told you the fence, I was having trouble trying to match that, and so I elected to not even try and just go with some dollhouse fence, and I'll show you how to cut this and make it work. And so it is not perfect, but once the paint is on it, it's going to look really, really good, I think. And so the fence goes all the way around the display on all sides. So it looks good, not too bad. As we come over on this side and kind of take a look down the row there, you can see the fence there all around the display. And then there'll be grass outside of the fence, and once it's all detailed, it's going to look really, really good. At least I think it is. Still a lot of work to go, but we are one step closer. So how do you make this fence? Well, that's what we're going to get ready to take a look at. Here's the cool part. This fence is all modular, okay? And so I made it that way on purpose. It's easier to store. It is easy to set up and take down. And so you can kind of see the fence just kind of comes apart like that. And then it'll be obviously painted and then put right back into place. And then there'll be grass along this seam here with some shrubbery. You'll never see it. And then the fence sits right back together, and looks pretty good once it's all back together. So let's jump in and take a look at how to build one of these fences. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a different camera angle. We're going to be working here on the countertop with the Proxxon hot wire tables, all kinds of tools to build this fence. So when we start looking at an individual fence like this, this is all made out of XPS foam, right? And except the actual plastic part here, which is dollhouse fence that I usually buy off of eBay. And then this little ball on top is essentially push pins, right? So that's all that is there. And then this will all be painted all black, and then we will highlight the fence in the brownish orange brick color, and then detail it up and put it all back together and be done with it. But this piece of fence here, again, it's all modular. It's easier to store that way. It's easier to build that way. And it's just, it's the way that I do it. And so this piece of fence is actually going to consist of 1 piece of foam, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 pieces of foam cut at different lengths and depths, and then 2 pieces of plastic, the fence piece and the little push pin ball that sits on top for the ornamentation, as you would see on any type of a fence like this. Okay, so that's how we do it. So now how do we start it? Well, first we've got to take measurements. And how do we do that? Well, I've already taken the measurements, but let me grab the fence. And we're taking measurements to the best of our ability off of this fence. So when we start looking at the fence here, as you can see, now I don't use the ground here as part of my measurement. I go all the way to the base because I'm not building the mound for this fence to sit on. So this fence goes all the way to the ground. And so when you start looking, I try to match close the height of this pillar. All right, and if it's pretty level, it's pretty close to being about that height. Now grass will come up and fill this void, and you'll see that in a later build. And so it'll kind of, where my fingers are, kind of capture, hide that much of the fence. And so it'll look absolutely normal. And so that's the way that I measure to build. I measure from the top all the way down to the base that this is going to sit on. And so I've taken the measurements of these, and now what we need to do is start cutting on the hot wire foam table. Now we've got 4 cuts to make. So let's reposition the camera and let me show you how to do those cuts. Okay, so hopefully you can see here, I've got the hot wire, Proxxon hot wire foam table out. This is a 2-inch piece of XPS foam. Now this was cut off of the bigger piece. This was a 2 foot by 2 foot section. Just pieces I had left over. So I've just cut it down a little bit, something easier to work with. And so when we start measuring the fence, I know that this area here, this first cut that I'm gonna make is 5.5 inches long, okay? And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my ruler up on the edge of this foam. I'm gonna go out to 5.5 or thereabout. And then I'm going to mark just a little area where I'm gonna cut at about 5.5 inches. Okay, and you can see the little mark there. That's my first cut. So what I've got to do now is I've got to set up this gate. Now again, I tape this gate down so it doesn't move. And so really what I'm doing is I'm going to line this mark up that I just made with the wire, which is right about there. Okay, and then I'm going to tape it down so it doesn't move on both sides. We're going to turn this on. Now again, this has got settings from 1 through 6. Mine is on about a 4.5 for this type of cut. And so right here we go. We've got everything set. And now we're just going to push this straight through with one nice smooth action. Okay, so there is my first 5.5 piece cut. Now I'll just kind of hold it up for measuring purposes, and you can see that it's pretty good. That's about what I want, okay? So now what I've got to do is, this is obviously much thinner, okay? So if we measure the thickness of this, we're looking at just about maybe just a little bit more than a 1/4 inch thick on this, and so that's where we're going to cut. So what I got to do is, again, transfer the ruler here. Closer to the top is easier, and then about 1/4 inch, just a little bit thicker than that. So maybe somewhere right in there. So you can see the mark that I made. And so that's where we're going to split this foam lengthwise like this. Okay, so we reposition our gate. Now the mark is on this side, so I've got to see the mark. So it lines up right about there. So I'm lining the mark up with this wire. It's lined up, so I'm going to tape it back down. Turn it back on, and again, I'm just going to run this through, this time from this side. Okay, and basically I cut it almost in half. And then there's my sheet that I'm going to use. Now, let's just measure that to see which one is the right length here. As we kind of hold it up, and I know that's hard for the camera to see, but that is the same thickness on either side. Very close anyway, and it's not perfect, but check this out. I want you to see something so when I look at this, I look at it and I go, it's not exactly the same thickness. And I want to try to show you the gap there. So if I line these up, there's the gap. Hopefully you can see that overhang there. So what I can do is I can bring this gate really close to this wire. This is why you need a Proxxon hot wire foam table, because you can't make precise cuts without one. Okay, so now we've got it really thin, and we're just going to push the foam right back through it. Okay. That's the piece that we just took off. I mean, it's paper thin, right? So I just wanted to demonstrate, you could do all sorts of stuff with this. We don't need it, but you can make just about anything with that little piece of foam. Okay, so now if we double check, just to line everything up, and now look at the top, how they fit together. It's perfect. So we took just a little bit off, and now it sits just perfect. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so now the height-wise, I've already measured this. It's 1.5 inches tall. Okay, so we need to cut it at 1.5 inches. And so if we set our foam, I'm just going to double check that measurement. It's actually about 1.25 inches, just over 1.25 inches. So if we do just over 1.25 inches, we'll do it up here closer to the top where the cut, we can see the line better. 1.25 inches, so right about. Does that look right? That does not look right. Oh yeah, just over 1.25 inches. I did not have 1.25 inches. That's why I was curious. 1 inch. Okay, so there's 1 inch, there's 1/4, and just over, there's 1/4 right there. Just over the 1/4 mark. So we're good there. We've got our line. It's that one right there. You can see the line. And now we're going to reposition our gate for that line, which is right about there. We're going to lock our gate back down with the tape. And we're just going to go right through this, nice and smooth. Okay, so this is, after all that cutting, this is our first piece of our wall. Okay, see how that fits together there? Same distance, same length. Everything else. Okay, and when you set it up like that, now you can kind of see the side-by-side comparison. Okay, so that's step number one. So when we take our gate and we start measuring these were 3 inches tall, like I said, and so we've measured these. We're not really measuring this, we're just kind of going off the same scale in a bigger brick format. We're not worrying about these, and so now we just need to start making these, and these are and these being the pillars, are 3 inches tall. So let's get ready for that. Okay, so earlier I sliced another piece of this 2-inch thing board off. And so here's what we got left. So now I know that I need 3 inches, right? And so we'll double check that measurement just to make sure. But as a matter of fact, let me put it right to the top of this. We are 3 inches to the top, but that's not this piece. Okay, so this piece is 2 3/4. So 2 3/4 is what this is going to be. So when we go 2 3/4 here, bring that to the top, we go 2 3/4. Okay, so our line is right there. Okay, reposition our gate. Okay. So that is our first cut, and you can see how it lines up there with that. Now, this is only 3/4 of an inch wide. So when we measure this, we got to cut this down now 3/4 by 3/4 on every single side. So the way we do that, again, is we measure. And I just double check. Always measure twice, just like wood shop, right? Measure twice, cut once. Okay, so right there. So when we line this up, we are just shy of 3/4, not much. May as well just call it 3/4 of an inch. So right there's our line. So not much off of this one. Now, I know this is difficult to see in some cases, but here is the piece right there, and you can see that we are now to the proper width, okay, on one side, but not the other side. So we've got to take just a little bit more off. And I'm just going to measure here just for the sake. It's still 3/4, but might as well just measure right here. Okay, so there's my mark. Okay, and then this is what I'm left with. And this is our pillar that's going to sit right there. So now we've got two pieces. Okay, so now we got to make the small little top cap and then the main larger top cap right there. So 2 more pieces and we're done with this. So this is going to be, and we can use, see how we can use the same stuff, except I'm going to just use scraps now. So I'm going to take these pieces. These are what we're going to use. I'm going to set them out of the way so we don't lose them. Okay, and then I'm going to take a piece of scrap And essentially what I'm gonna do, there's no measuring here. I just sort of line it up with the top and say, okay, if I was gonna have a top cap on that, I would want it to look about like that, and then I mark it. So something about like that. Now it's too thick, and we'll cut that down, but let's first cut it to the right size. Okay, now if I was, when I was doing this for all 9 fences, once I had the measurement, I would just continue to cut. So if that was going to be, if I was going to be making multiple of these, I would just keep it right there and just keep cutting the foam to where now I just made 3 of them versus just 1 of them. So while you've got the measurement, you just keep pushing foam through it, is the point there. Okay, so we have got our top cap, but you can see that it's too thick. All right, so we want that to be about half of that size. Maybe not quite, I mean, a little bit less than half. So maybe something like that. We'll take that off. So again, as we start doing this, and it gets, now we need something to kind of push it through with, and we take another piece of foam and just run it through like that. And now we've got a more easy to believe top cap, okay? Something about like that. Okay, so there's that, and now we need a final end cap, okay? And we are going to take just a normal piece of foam and cut it down, because what we're trying to do is get a cap that is a little bit bigger than this. And so I've got to cut one down to make that. So I've got a piece of foam here, and I'll just cut one down a little bit bigger than this. So when I do that, obviously it needs to overhang a little bit on each side. So we'll just mark it about there, just to get a rough idea. Now again, if I was going to make multiple of these, I would just slide that out of the way, slide that back through, slide that out of the way, slide this back through, and I would just continue to make the same exact pieces to use like that. Okay, so now we've got the overhang there. And so really I'm just kind of measuring now the amount of overhang that I want. Okay, and so we'll go right about there. Okay, so you can see my mark there. And we'll go right back through and cut this down. Okay, and again, it's much too thick, so we're gonna skinny this way down, and we're gonna use another piece of foam to kind of help us take it through. And now we've got our top cap. So when that sits on like that, you can kind of see the overhang. And when it all sits on like that, you can kind of see the way it's starting to shape up, right? And then we would just glue all these together when it's done. So this is all the pieces for that fence. That's what we just cut out. So we've made one section of fence. And there's a lot of scraps left over. But if you're making multiple sections, you can continue to just cut and cut and cut till you know what you need. Okay, so that's our hot wire foam table cutting our fence. So that's what we need now. I'm going to set these aside. I'm going to clean my mess up and reposition the camera, and I'll be right back for the next step. Okay, so hopefully you can see a little bit better now. I've got a couple of things set up. This is some pretty intricate work here. And so it's hard to show this, so I'm going to try to do the best I can. So the first thing you'll need is a tool. This is like a soldering gun, but it's for woodworking, and it comes with all sorts of different tips. I've got a very fine point tip on it. I like this one because you can control the amount of heat with this little on and off switch, and you can crank it up to really hot or not real hot at all. And then it's got this little stand that it sits on, and it comes, like I said, you can find these in the craft stores. I think I got this one at Michael's. It's back typically in the woodworking section. I don't remember how much I paid for it. It wasn't a great deal, probably $20 or $25. If that, it may have been less than that. So, but what we're going to do is these two pieces are not going to need to be carved at all. So we're just going to set those aside and get them out of our way. We don't need those at all. But we do need to carve these two so it looks like this one, right? And so the way we're going to do that is simply, you need a ruler with a metal edge. And I don't know if you can see the little metal edge sticking out. I think you know what I'm talking about though. And the metal edge allows you to use this heat tool without melting the plastic of a plastic ruler. Now, if you have a metal ruler or whatever, that's fine too. But essentially what we're going to do is I just typically count the rows of bricks that I want. And so for this one, I did one cut, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuts, and tried to space them out as evenly as I could, minus the top row, which is going to be the little stacked bricks on their sides versus lengthwise. And so that's why that looks kind of like that, okay? And so the way that I do this is I simply kind of line this straight edge up. Now there is no science behind this. I just kind of do what looks right. Okay, this tip, you'll have to experiment with the type of tips you use. And also, it's a good idea just to kind of cut on something that you're not going to use, just to see if it's hot enough. And this one, it's okay. It could be a little bit hotter. So I'm going to turn this one up just a tad, and then let that work itself in there. Okay, our tool should be hot now. So I've basically taken the pencil and I've laid it across and done 5 lines where I want this based on my ruler on either side. So the way that this is going to work, and I hope again that you're going to be able to see this, I line that metal part of the ruler up with each individual line. Now, I think that's going to be my top piece. So start like that, something about like that. I hold the ruler and then I just bring this over like a pencil and go slow, right up against the ruler. Okay. And that's your first line, just like that. Okay, so now we drop down to the second line, line the ruler back up. Okay, so there are the 5 lines in your brickwork, and they're pretty straight. They're not too bad. It's not It's not perfect by any measure. I didn't really measure it. I just kind of eyeball the distance. And so it looks okay, just like that. And so now we're gonna cut the rows of bricks across the top. That is the next easiest thing for me to do. So let me reposition this camera to where hopefully you're gonna be able to see. And then I just start cutting just like this. Okay, so it's not great, and certainly I'm off angle here. This would be way, more in front of me and so on, so I could see a little bit better. But this is just demonstration purposes of how that I go and do that. And now I simply just turn it over and connect you can see the little lines where they started to come through. I just now connect those, just like that. Okay. So now we've got the top row of bricks done. So now, and this little fuzz, as any kind of you do a hot wire cutting on the foam, these little strings go everywhere. So you gotta clean as you go to the best of your ability. So now we just start working the bricks. Now I don't measure anything, I just sort of eyeball it. You could do very precise measurements if you wanted, but I don't, that's not for me with most of the stuff that I do. Okay, so I basically just start here. Okay, so that is the alternating stacked pattern of bricks. And again, they're not, it's not perfect. The lines are not exactly symmetrical. They're not the same distance, but that's okay. It does not look half bad. And if you were to line it up with this one now, you can see that it's close. It's not perfect, but it's close. And you'll have a pillar in between, so that would throw the eyes off a little bit more. So close enough for me. All right, so that is that piece. Now, people are always saying, okay, now how do you transfer the cuts here? Well, this is something I truly eyeball. And so what I do is I take, let me move this so I don't burn myself. I line this up to the bottom, just like that. And then I transfer those marks over here to start with. Okay, so that's all the marks that I got. So now I just sort of eyeball that and continue those marks at about the same distance. And that's going to get us somewhat close of what we're going to do. Now this, a lot of people, you would use a ruler and be very detail oriented. I I'm just going to eyeball it and just make one straight cut, flip it, make one straight cut, flip it and make one straight cut. It's gonna get close. This is the result of that. It's not perfect, but it gets you in the ballpark. And so that's what I'm doing. Now you could go incredibly detailed if you wanted to. But for me, I am just going to take the pin and just drag it right across the top of this. I'm trying to get to where I can see a little bit better. Let me bring the camera a little bit more this way. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so now we've got all of the vertical lines, or the horizontal lines rather, cut. So now we need to add the vertical lines. And for this, I don't overthink it at all. I start at the top with 1, then I go to 2, then I go back to 1, then I go to 2, then I go back to 1, and so on. Okay, and now we clean up all the fuzz as best we can. And we've got this pillar is now done with the horizontal and the vertical lines. And then to match it up, you can see how most of those lines will line up pretty close initially, and that's kind of what you're looking for. And so then that piece will go just like this and be hot glued just like that. Okay, so let's get the hot glue gun set up and we'll be right back. Okay, one thing that I want to do before I unplug this soldering, the wood tool, and while my glue gun is heating up, I want to work on the fence a little bit. Okay, so this is the dollhouse fence that I purchased off of eBay. You can find various types. This is a fairly inexpensive type, and so I can get 2 fences out of this, right? I chose to go with the bottom half of the fence for this particular project because the top half is a little different in looks, and I can use that for something different later on. And so the way that I do that is I take like a box knife, something sharp, and I'm just gonna cut it right at the area, and you just kind of work your way down through it. I'm trying to cut just the part of the fence off that separates the two for me. And so hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. This takes a little bit of patience, and obviously you're working with a knife, so make sure that you've got a cutting board, a cutting pad or something underneath, and just be very careful. And so I just go and take my time and cut it out. I'm almost there. Okay, so now I would clean these up at the bottom and use this later for a different fence. Okay, so we'll set that aside and save it, but this is the piece that I'm going to use here. Okay, so obviously I need to cut the sides of this off. So I basically, so what I'm doing is, if you don't shield it, the little black piece will fly all over the house. So I just put it down, cut it. I'm just trying to get rid of these end pieces. So we're left like this. Okay, now I'm going to measure what I need of this fence along this fence line here, this foam that we cut. So I need to go just right about there. So I make a nice little cut where I can see it in the fence. I don't know that you'll be able to see it, but I can certainly see it. I set it down and I cut right there on that mark. Okay, it's got a cut there, and then I just basically bring it straight up. And now that is scrap and can be discarded. And that's what we're left with, is the fence. Now, the easiest way I found to do this is we set our fence up straight. Okay, just so you know, it's measured pretty good. It's about what we need right there. And so what I do is I set it on top, just about like that. And I center it with the center of the top of the fence, and then I push down to get those in the center. I push down to make an indentation. And now you can see very faint indentations of where those are going to go. Now for me, the easiest thing to do is just bring this hot probe right down through the center. I turned the heat down quite a bit. Okay, now we're officially done with the heat tool. I'll let that cool down. We get rid of the leftover debris. And so that's what you're left with for the fence. And so the fence then will simply just poke right down into that, just like you want it to. And that's how you're left with a fence on top. Okay? Now we can either, I do mine like this, and then I take them out because I want to paint all of this without this being in the way. But I know I've got the holes there, so all I got to do is, when I'm ready, is snap it right back in place with a couple of drops of glue, and then it's permanent. It's not going anywhere. So hopefully that helps to understand about the fence. Okay, so we'll take this out for now. And now we're ready to move the heat gun and start using the glue gun. Now, we made this fence a little bit opposite of the other because of the way this is going to go in, but it's all the same. So I'm going to take my glue gun. I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Let me reposition the camera so you're able to see. Okay, a little bit of glue right here. Okay, and now we just kind of put it together just about like that. I always put it down to make sure that it's level, and just push it push them together to allow that glue to start to set up and harden, okay? Okay, so now we've got those glued together, which is not too bad. Set up pretty nice. Okay, and now we're gonna go with these two pieces here, okay? So I take a little dab of glue right to the top, not much. Sometimes the glue is not quite hot, and that's what happens. Okay, and now we take this and I try to smash it down in there and wiggle it around a little bit to like position it right about where I think it ought to go. For me, that looks about right. So we'll let that dry. While that's drying, we do the same thing, a little drop of glue. Again, smash that around in there to get it flat. And then we're looking for that overhang of just a little bit. Okay, to me that looks pretty good. Okay. It doesn't matter what color, we're going to paint these anyway. And we go right down through the center, as close to the center as we can, and push. Okay, that is the fence glued together. It's not going to go anywhere, it's pretty sturdy. Okay, now we take our fence, put it right back into the holes that we drilled. And that is how we make the fence piece. And you can see there would be another pillar in between those, but I mean, they match up pretty close if they were to look like that, or however you want to do it, if you want another pillar in between, or whichever way you'd like them to go. But that's how you build the fence. Okay, well, here it is. Is it perfect? No. Is it close? I think it is, and I think it will look great once it's painted and detailed up. You'll never see the little inaccuracies that we did here during this particular build. A lot of folks have asked me, how did you do the graveyard fence? This is exactly the same way that I did the graveyard fence, but this one was more difficult, quite honestly, because you've got all the carving. The graveyard fence is like slab of stone with a top of that, kind of like this up here, running across, one at the bottom. But by all differences, if you can do this, you can do the graveyard fence as well. I don't know how you would do any of this stuff, though, quite honestly, without a hot wire foam table. The Proxon is the one that I have. They sell them on Amazon. You can certainly look those up. I don't know how much they cost anymore. I've had mine for a few years, and so they may have gone up in price. They may have come down. I don't know. I don't check it because mine works just fine. But you have to have one of those, at least in my opinion, to make something like this. I mean, we showed you earlier, it cuts paper thin foam, and so with that, I don't know how else you could do that and shave little pieces off to get intricate details like we did on the fence. But that's how you do it. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. And I'll tell you, I think all the little details that you put into your builds adds to the overall realism of the build in the long run. And that's why I do that. That's why I put the grout in the brickwork on the base. That's why I don't think I'm going to put grout in this. I think it's just going to be too much, and I think I'm just going to paint this and try to mirror the mansion gate, the Department 56 accessory, as close as I can and call it good. And I think it's going to look just fine. So next, we have to sit down and start painting these. And I told you I owed you a tutorial on how to paint them. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do the tutorial on how to paint it. I still have to do a tutorial on how to grout. That's coming. But so the next one will be painting. So we'll sit down and start painting all these and get these up. I will save this piece, and this is what we're going to use next to paint on. And I'll show you exactly how we do that. So that's what you got to look forward to in the upcoming tutorial number 5. After the painting, then we really have to start detailing, putting the grass down around the edges, start gluing everything together, and then we'll talk about the light. So another couple of videos for sure. Don't know exactly when we'll end this one. So, hey, anyway, if you've liked this video, please make sure you click the like button. It helps the channel for sure. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing that. Also, that helps the channel to grow, and it certainly helps me out. And I do appreciate every single subscriber. So, got another one coming for you here in the next couple of days. Happy 4th of July coming up tomorrow. Enjoy. Don't shoot your fingers off. You need those to craft with. Take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you again real soon.